In this lesson, we'll download, install, and configure pfSense. pfSense is a free open source firewall and router that has unified threat management, load balancing, VPN, and many more services. We will configure pfSense routing and DHCP services in this series. We've come to the point where we must segment our networks and provide IP management for hosts on our network. First, we started with VirtualBox and set up Kali Linux for offensive security. Our target computer is now Ubuntu. Now we need routing and DHCP services. Enter pfSense. pfSense is the world's leading open source firewall, VPN, and router. It is developed and maintained by the Netgate company and a community of contributors. The project was first released in 2004 and has since seen ongoing development. pfSense can be installed on a dedicated computer or virtual machine like we have on VirtualBox to secure and route network traffic. pfSense is used to enhance network security, manage and control network traffic, and provide advanced features for both home and the enterprise. pfSense is based on the free BSD operating system, a Unix-like system, and utilizes a web-based graphical user interface for configuration and management, making it user-friendly and accessible to a wide range of users. The rest of the how is what this video is all about, so let's get into it. To get started, grab the companion guide from the link in the show notes below. If you like this content, make sure to subscribe to the channel so you won't miss any new videos. Also, make sure you're familiar with installing VirtualBox, Kali Linux, and Ubuntu. And we're back. So we have our companion guide on the left, we have the instructions, so we're going to go through the instructions step by step. So the first action item is visit the pfSense website, go to pfSense.org, which you can see here, and we have the website. It says go to the download section in this portion here, and it says choose the appropriate version of pfSense for our hardware architecture. Okay, so architecture, I'm going to go with the AMD 64-bit. For the installer, I'm going with the DVD installer because I want the ISO. And in terms of mirror sites, for me, Austin, Texas is the closest one, and I'm going to click download, and it's going to move it over into the downloads folder. You can see the previous Kali Linux and the Ubuntu ISO. I'm going to download and give that a moment. So that took about a minute or so. I'm going back into the downloads folder. I see it in the bottom of my browser. I click open and I see that we have the pfSense file. However, it's in a different format. It's in the GZ format. So we need to uncompress it. So with me on a Mac, I'm going to actually open up a terminal session so you can see what that looks like. I'm going to open up terminal. And in terminal, I'm going to run the command that you see here so you can actually see it uncompressed. So in Mac, which is my host operating system, I'm going to cd to my home directory and I'm going to go to downloads. And let's go into the downloads folder and I should see the pfSense file here. So I'm going to run the gzip command to uncompress it. So it's gz command -d to decompress pfSense. We complete that. And what you want to see here is it's going to extract that file so I can get the ISO. If you are on a Windows machine, you can use the 7Z app to uncompress it. And we did that in the Kali Linux episode, so you can take a peek at that as well. So we're done with the compressing or the uncompressing of the file. Let's get over to VirtualBox. So I'm going to get rid of the terminal session. I'm going to get rid of the downloads folder. Somewhere behind here, I should have VirtualBox, and we can go right into the first step, but let's do some housekeeping. We have downloaded the installer according to these specifications. I extracted the file. This is not applicable because I'm on a Mac operating system for my host computer. So I'm going to create pfSense with a virtual machine. So it says go ahead, and in the welcome scene, I'm going to open VirtualBox and click new. Great. And I'm going to name the machine pfSense. So let's get that into the center over here. And I'm going to type pfSense. I'm going to accept the default folder. So let's do a little housekeeping here so that way we have it all. And in the ISO image, I'm going to navigate to the downloads folder where I have the pfSense ISO file. I select that. In select type, it says BSD. And also in the free BSD, I'm going to go with 64-bit. I take a look at my settings here. I like what I see here. I'm going to select BSD as done, free BSD, and then we go ahead and click next. In next, I accept the defaults of a gig. I'm going to create the virtual hard disk and accept the 16 gigabyte. Click next. I take a look at the summary of settings. It looks like everything we put in here, we accept the defaults. I go ahead and click finish. Great. So I'll go ahead and do some housekeeping on our checklist to make sure everything is done. I'm going to scroll into the configure the network interfaces. So this is what we're going to do here. We're going to create a subnet, or what I should say is a private network. So what we're trying to do is get into this document here. So as we mentioned before, we had our Kali Linux. I have an IP address here. This is pfSense. We're going to install a DHCP server on it. We're also going to put on a firewall. In subsequent courses, we'll have a Snort as an IDS IPS, which is an intrusion detection and intrusion protection system. So we're going to configure these adapters on pfSense. So we have a local area network adapter and we have a wide area network adapter. Let's go ahead and take a look and see what that looks like. So I'm back here and it says go to pfSense and go to virtual machine and go to settings. And in settings, we're going to look at the adapter. So we have network 1 or adapter 1. Make sure that it's enabled. We're going to set it to a bridge adapter. And what that's going to do is get an IP address from my small office, home office. I have DHCP running here. That bridge adapter is going to go out and get an IP address, but that's going to act as my wide area network. So this is going to be this interface here as my wide area network. Okay, I like what I see here. Nothing else to accept, to change. I'm going to accept the adapter 2, move over to adapter 2. And it says in adapter 2, we're going to enable the network. We're going to make it an internal network. And I have a network that I called PrivNet. It's a private network. You can just tap that right in. And in advanced, we want the promiscuous mode to allow virtual machines. These are all the settings here. So I'm going to put this on the side here so we can see it. I'm going to go to settings as we said here, the bridge adapter. Adapter 2 is the internal network, and I clicked advanced settings to allow the virtual machines. I click OK, and this is the setting that I have set up for my environment. I have a local area network, I have a wide area network set up for that VM, and we are done with installing pfSense. Configuring the network interfaces on the virtual machine. Now we're going to actually install pfSense, so let's go ahead and click on the start button. And that'll start up. We'll give it a moment. While that's starting up, I'm going to give myself a little bit more real estate like we usually do. I'm going to put virtual screen onto 200 auto scale so we can see that a little bit bigger or better. Let's see if we can do it even more. Actually, I'm going to 250. Okay, so we have a couple of screens that we have to go through here, and they're all highlighted on the left side here. So the first one is accept the copyright and distribution notice. I'm going to click OK on the install pfSense. OK on the guided route on the ZFS. I select the install here. I'm basically clicking through all of these options. To get into this option here, I have to use the space bar to select the VirtualBox hard disk. I just did that. And by the way, right now my mouse is caught into this screen, and in order to free it, I have to use the left Apple key. Here's what I mean. Down here, my mouse was caught in this virtual machine because it didn't have mouse integration turned on. But in order to release my mouse, it says use this keyboard combination. It says left Apple key to free it. So if your mouse is trapped, you'll see the keyboard combination down here that'll allow you to untrap it or set it free. Okay, so I'm back in here. I click OK. It says, this is my last time. Am I sure? The answer is yes. Actually, I'm gonna, hit that. And then we're going to let it install. So we'll wait a moment and allow pfSense to install. Okay, so that took about 30 seconds. The next step is to power off. And by the way, my mouse is trapped again, so I'm using the Apple key, left key, to free it up. I'm going to put it on the side here so you can see. And I'm going to power off pfSense because the disk is still in the tray. In other words, if I was to reboot right now, it would start the installation process over again. So what I'm going to do is a couple of things. First, I'm going to go to Settings, and I'm going to go to Storage, and this is the ISO file or the disk. And if I click on this little icon here, I can remove the disk from the virtual drive. Okay, great. It's now empty. Now I'm going to basically stop and power off pfSense. It went away. And let's do a little bit of housekeeping while we're doing that. Actually, we'll start it to save some time. Now we're going to do a normal start. pfSense will start up again. We'll tuck it on the side here so we can see. And I'll do some of the homework or the housekeeping. So we install this. I did the auto scale, copyright, select. All of this was done. And now we want to configure the network interfaces as pfSense is booting up. So we'll give it a chance to catch up. And we're going to run through these steps here. Okay, so that took about 2 minutes or so for that boot up process. I have pfSense here, and it says go ahead and take a look at the local IP address of the WAN and the LAN interfaces. So I want to locate that. So this is the wide area network. I'm getting this from a DHCP server in my small office, home office, and it's the 10.0.1.54. According to the diagram, it's over here. You may get a different IP address from time to time. I happen to get a .54 from this interface at this time of reboot. And also my local area network is 192.168. We're going to change that in a moment. And we're going to go through the steps. So I located the IP addresses. I want to change these interfaces. So in order to do that, it says go ahead and set interfaces IP address. That's option number 2. And it also says if I want to change the LAN interface, EMY static, select number 2 again and hit enter. And it asks me, do I want to configure IPv4 address via DHCP? I do not. I want to statically assign it. So I'm going to select N and hit no. And it says enter the IP address. So we're going to put in this IP address. This is the gateway for the router, 172.16.1.1. So I'm going to put that right here. 172.16.1.1. I hit enter, and it's going to be a /16 or class B subnet mask. So I'm going to select 16, hit enter, and let's do a little housekeeping so we see where we are. So I went to the interface. I'm doing the local area network interface. I want to statically or manually assign the IP address of 172.16.1.1. It's a /16, and this is where we are in the diagram. This is the interface that I'm configuring here. For this option, it says for the WAN option, enter the IPv4 upstream gateway address. I do not want that. It also says, do I want to configure DHCP 6? We're going to be all IPv4 in this exercise and those going forward. And I'm also going to say, no, I do not want to enter IPv6. And then we scroll up here, and this is where we're going to enable DHCP services on the PrivNet or the private network coming from pfSense. So it says, do you want to enable DHCP server on a local area network? The answer is yes. And it says enter the start range. So I'm going to start a little bit higher. We like to start with the router at .1, reserve maybe 100 or so for network services, depending on what you're working on. And my first host is going to start out at 172.16.1.100. That's going to be the address range. Really, 101 is going to be the first one. Enter the end address. This is going to be the end range, 172.16.1.200. And it says, do I want to revert to HTTP? No, I want this to be HTTPS. So I'm going to set no, hit enter. And while that's configuring, we'll do our housekeeping on this side here. I configured the upper limit, the lower limit, no HTTP. I continued. I take a look here. It says this is the way to actually get into the router via the web. We'll see that a little bit later. I hit enter, and let's go ahead and take a look at our interfaces here. So I locate the IP address of the WAN. It is the 10.0.1.54. This may change depending on where you're connecting because it'll probably be DHCP assigned. And the gateway address for the local area network is 172.16.1.1/16. This network right here, /16, 172.16.1.1, Class B network. Okay, let's see if all of this works. It says, let's go ahead and see if we can ping the outside world. I select option 7, hit enter, and let's see if we can ping Google's DNS, 8.8.8.8. And we have successful pings. We have 3 packets transmitted, 3 packets received, 0% packet loss. We have configured the router. Okay, so let's pause here and let's go ahead and scroll up. And we're going to verify that pfSense DHCP server is doling out IPs to the DHCP clients. So I actually can tuck this away. Because it's a backend service, we won't interface with it right away. I'm going to tuck it away, and I'm going to go to the Kali Linux adapter. So I'm going to take a look at Kali Linux. I have it powered off over here. And in settings, I'm going to take the Kali Linux adapter, this adapter 1, and I do not want network address translation. I want to connect it to the internal network and make sure it's on the priv network or the private network, PrivNet. We'll go to advanced. I'm going to allow VMs. I click OK, and I'm going to start that up. And while Kali Linux is starting up, I want you to be able to see this is where we are. So we're basically making sure that the Kali Linux adapter is connected to the private network, so that way it can connect and see this router via DHCP. Now keep in mind, I realize that this may be a little bit complicated from a hands-on perspective. The assumption is that you are getting the theory from either online videos or you're in a course, and we actually want to get into the lab practical portion of this. How do you download a router? How do you configure it? What are these settings that we talk about in class? This is an opportunity to actually do it in the real world. While we're doing that, I see that Kali Linux is booting up. I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to just tuck it on the side here. I'm going to do the same thing with the Ubuntu just to make sure that it's fine here. So on the Ubuntu, I'll do the same thing. I'm going to go to settings. I'll go to network. I want adapter 1 to be connected to the internal network. I want to make sure it's on PrivNet, the private network, and I'm going to allow VMs. I click OK. That's fine. It went to the back. I am now back to Kali Linux. I'm going to select show, and I'm ready to log in. Kali is the username and password. The screen starts to illuminate. This is fantastic. And I'm at that screen there. I'll do the same thing with Ubuntu. We'll start firing up Ubuntu just to get it ready for the next exercise. I'll bring this over on the side over here. But right now we're going to go back to Kali Linux. Click on show. And I want to see if we have an IP address. So what I can do is open a terminal, and I'm going to do it here. And we'll make that a little bit bigger, as we can see. And I'm going to do IP adder. And I see that I have a 176.1.102. So I am getting an IP address, a different one, slightly different one, which is fine. There may be another host here, maybe my Ubuntu, and I'm getting it from this DHCP server. How do I know? There's 2 ways we can configure this and verify. Number 1 is I can go ahead and look at the settings from the graphical user interface. So I'll go over here into Kali, and I'll connect with the advanced network configuration tool. And if you go there, we have a wired connection. I'm going to double click on that. And in the IPv4 section, it says automatic DHCP. I'm getting my IP address from a dynamic host configuration protocol. So that's one way to look at it. I'm going to close this. I don't need that anymore. I'm also going to look at it from a reset perspective. So I'm going back to the companion guide, do a little housekeeping. And it says if I want to make sure everything is set, I can reboot the computer, and this is true. But because this is a DHCP assigned IP address, we can look at the DH client. So there's a command called, and we need sudo. I'll go back on this side to do that. We need sudo DH client, and I'm going to do -R for release. I'm going to get rid of this IP address, and I don't have it. Let's see with an IP adder if that comes back to me. And you see we do not have the IP address assigned anymore on Ethernet 0. The 172.16.1.102 is gone. If I want to bring it back, I'm going to do DHCP sudo DH client, dynamic host client, just regular, and I should get a nice new IP address. Well, it's the same one, it just be refreshed. And now you see we have, oh, we got a different one this time, which is fine. We have the IP address here that's given by the DHCP server. So this IP address is coming from this DHCP server. I'm going to clear for a final test. I'm going to ping the router. So I'm coming from Kali Linux. I happen to have a 103, which is fine. I'm going to ping the Kali Linux, the pfSense router. So it's 172.16.1.1. We don't want that. And we have healthy ping replies, Control Z. Now we want to see if we can ping through the router out to the local area network interface, pass through pfSense, out the wide area network interface, and to Google's DNS. We're going to do ping 8.8.8.8. This is fantastic. And we'll also try and ping quad 1, which is Cloudflare, and see if we can get there. And yes, we have successful pings. We'll let that run for a little bit. And to ensure that the changes take effect, we can either restart the network service. So we can do sudo system control network services restart, or we could simply reboot. I'm happy with what we have here. So we'll end it for this session. In the next session, we'll take a look at firewalling and working some more of pfSense features. We'll see you then.